Astral Ascent is one of the latest roguelike games I've picked up as it finally released out of early access, and man, let me tell you, it is something else. It's developed by Hibernian Workshop, which is a small indie team located in France, and they only have one other game made with Dark Devotion, which is an indie RPG roguelike game that had a successful Kickstarter raising over 30,000 euros. It had some success on Steam with a little over 1,500 reviews, but their latest project is something that is hard to beat, Astral Ascent. It released in the early access on April 12th of 2022, and according to the release tweet, they had been working on the game for over 3 years before the early access release, and it also had a very successful Kickstarter raising nearly 150,000 euros and being fully funded in 36 hours. So what is Astral Ascent? Well, it's an action platformer roguelite with some incredible pixel graphics and a lot of in-depth variety, crazy enemies, and so much more. I want to go over everything that this game has to offer quickly and concisely as always. So first, let's talk about the inside of a run. You have 5 chapters total, with the first 4 chapters each having 3 different bosses at the end, all representing a different zodiac sign. The first time you play this game, these bosses will be brutal to fight, but like any great roguelite, after a few tries, you'll start to recognize the pattern. What's truly overwhelming in this game is all the stuff between the bosses, and it's a lot. Every chapter is filled to the brim with items, currencies, challenge rooms, and plenty of opportunities to heal and catch a breather. You can play as one of 4 different characters, and you go through each world collecting spells that can all hold different gambits, and those gambits are basically buffs for that spell. And the spells cost mana to use, and you regenerate mana with a basic attack. But what's confusing at first, or was for me at least, was the elemental effects that you can have on spells with the gambits. You can buff your spells with a feather, which you can get from one of the many secret rooms or buy one in the middle of a run with keys, but every spell can get a benefit from a certain elemental gambit, whether it be poison, electricity, ice, or fire, and applying multiple of the same gambits on a spell with the elemental buff, it will increase the effectiveness of the gambits. And that's one of the most confusing things about a run, I'd say, but I'd still view it as one of the most important things, is learning about the gambits and how to buff your spells properly. Because once you do that and master the gambits and master buffing your spells, you'll be able to fly through these runs a lot easier. Like I said, the spells are probably the biggest thing in a run, but every single room matters. The most common rooms you'll see are exploration or fight rooms, which will reward you with keys, stars, or quartz, which are the 3 main currencies in the game, and they're all extremely important. Keys are mainly used inside of any other room, where you unlock a Pavo feather to buff your spells or a stone altar to buff your general stats. Trying to balance those out throughout the run is important, but I tend to stick towards using my keys for feathers, as the stone altar buffs are the same buffs that you can use with stars at the end of a chapter at Andromeda's bar. So it'll sell you a drink to buff one of your stats for 8 stars total, and sometimes you can find a drink that'll buff 3 stats at once. But outside of the bar, the only thing I use stars for is buying 5 healing shards, which heal you, but you can find those inside of a run with doing basic attacks. And then we have the quartz, which are used at the end of a chapter as well, with buying new spells, unlocking gambit slots, or buying new gambits as a whole. Those 3 currencies are extremely important, but they're the most common thing you're going to be fighting for in every single chapter. But outside of those currencies, there's still a good amount of stuff to unlock inside of a run. But even before every chapter, you can find more buffs, mostly for your signature spell and general character buffs. You can also find auras and hold up to 4 auras in a single run, and usually get one at the end of a boss fight, and can even upgrade them a couple times. They act more so as more general buffs for your character, but usually have like a 10-second cooldown. Then you can find echo rooms, which kind of act like an ultimate, which have a longer cooldown, usually about 60 seconds or so, and they usually get used automatically under a certain criteria. And a cool thing is you can hold multiple echoes at once. You also have a small challenge rooms with the Zodiac bosses, and sometimes the rewards can reward you with having them help you inside your run, like a call in Hades. And then there's another challenge room, which is just a very hard boss fight that rewards you with literally everything: stars, keys, gambits, literally everything. And then there's even more rooms that have you unlock spells, gambits, and then rooms that allow you to buff all of them. There's so much to learn and find inside of a run that it's impossible for me to go super in depth with it. But I will say I am truly impressed with how many rooms are inside of a run. There's like probably 10 to 15 rooms you have to go through per chapter, and they are pretty easy, but no room feels useless. Now let's talk about the hub world and everything you can do outside of a run, which will be easier to explain. You can change your character's clothes and unlock new clothes with the yearly tickets. I'll say you also find these yearly tickets inside of a run, but they're cosmetics, so I don't really view them to be that important. You can earn more sun points, which are basically the meta progression points, by doing goals inside of a run. You also earn sun points by just playing a run. That's where you get most of them. But you can earn even more sun points by doing these small little goals, and you do them naturally. And the sun points do apply to every character, as you can unlock tons of new buffs with health, rerolls, etc. The game has a lot, and it gets expensive. You can also change the difficulty, which we will get to. And lastly, you can unlock new spells for every single character, which can lead me to my next point, and it's the variety that this game has to offer. It has 4 playable characters, and every single character has their own set of spells to unlock. Some spells unlocked can be used on every single character, but the amount of variety this game has with that alone is impressive. Every run is already feeling pretty unique, as every chapter has 3 different bosses that you can fight, but there's so many different spell combinations available with these 4 characters, and they all have a good amount of spells to unlock. It's a small thing that I really like and appreciate. It's obviously not as something as crazy like Enter the Gungeon with a billion different guns that it has, but they're 2 completely different games, and the variety is nice in this. There's not much more to say for variety in this game. It has the 4 different characters that all have different spells, which allows you to have a pretty unique run every single time, picking different spells up every single time. On top of all the different bosses you have, I'd say it's pretty great. But there's one more question that people tend to ask, and it's, is this game difficult? Overall, I say yes. The game has difficulty enhancers to my knowledge with Destiny, but they don't seem to unlock until you clear a run. And that final boss alone is very hard and very tanky. Even without difficulty enhancers, you could have some struggles with the bosses the first few times through. In early access, I remember unlocking some sort of difficulty enhancers after clearing a run, but won't talk about it because it may have been updated. So the difficulty of the game is harder than your average roguelite on standard mode, but the game does have some co-op, but I'm not sure if it makes the game harder or easier, as I tend to not play multiplayer in a game like this. Overall though, I really enjoy this game, and I'm glad I'm picking it back up after its 1.0 release, and I think a lot of people will be sleeping on this game. Dead Cells may be the best comparison with this game, as they're both action platformers and they're both great. The variety of spells, the in-depth options inside of a run, the elegant graphics made with so much love, it's a great time. Some may consider it pricey at about $20 US, but for the amount you get, it's well worth it. I will say the amount to learn inside of a run can be daunting at first with gambits and spells and elemental effects and all of that, and I can see the argument of the game being tedious with the same 4 worlds and enemies and setups, but 20 hours in for me, it still feels good. Granted, I didn't play for 7 months because I was waiting for the 1.0 release to come out, but this is an action roguelite you can't miss out on, and I think it's one of the best roguelites released this year. Thanks for watching this video on Astral Ascent. An extra special shout out to the people who support me on Patreon. Really, that extra support really means a lot. And yeah, that's all. I'll see you next time.